I will be talking for the next 20 minutes or so about what's next for the UK's power market in 2023. So, of course, a very big topic. And we have been witnessing a lot of change, a lot of transformation, the power market, in the broader energy market as a whole. So I will try to tackle some of the key points, some of the key transformations, just to set the scene for the discussion in the next session. Of course, Cornwall Insight, we've been established back in 2005, and we are one of the most respected voices in the energy industry, providing research, analysis, consulting, training, and modeling to a number of businesses and stakeholders in the Great British, Irish, and Australian energy markets. And I'm Dan Atzori, the research partner, very much looking after our research. So, as briefly mentioned before, as we are all aware, the last 2 years have seen very profound transformations, disruptions, and changes within the UK energy market and global energy markets for that extent. So the energy crisis means that energy was really at the epicenter of this crisis. Probably an extent we have not seen since the oil crisis in the 70s. So not that the energy was impacted, but energy was really at the center of those transformations. And what has been happening within the energy sector has been feeding through into the wider macroeconomy, leading, of course, to higher inflation, higher interest rates, as we all know very well. And this has in turn had other impacts on the energy sector. So it has been kind of a loop of causes and consequences, which means that today's power market looks quite different to a certain extent to what it was, and that we are witnessing a period of very rapid transformation. So we will try to look at some of the impacts on generation and retail markets, and also trying to look a bit at what's next, what could be happening in the near future, and a bit further ahead, and looking also at how the policy landscape is adapting and evolving in order to account for those transformations. So is the energy crisis over? So of course, it's a very familiar landscape. We saw prices, as we know very well, rising very sharply after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with the peak of wholesale electricity prices last summer. Since then, prices have been, of course, decreasing. There are still a lot of questions on what could be next, so on the winter ahead. So gas storage levels have been absolutely crucial across Europe to ensure this decline of, more broadly, I would say, the resilience of the energy security of the continent. Of course, there are still questions ahead because in case we see for example, a very hot summer with a lot of cooling and air conditioning at a continental level, these could potentially impact storage level, because it would be crucial for the resilience of the system to be ensured in the winter, to have full gas storage levels, so that we can be ready, as we have been ready for this winter, we can be ready even for a very cold winter. So in other words, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and a lot would depend on gas storage levels more broadly, given the enduring link between gas prices and electricity prices. So it is too early to see to say whether the energy crisis is over. For certain, last winter has been milder than expected. And so these were among the reasons that determined a much better situation of a much better resilience overall. So a lot of uncertainty, and of course, it's very important to remember that despite these decrease in electricity prices, businesses and customers and domestic customers as well have yet seen a limited, to a certain extent, decrease in their bills, and that's as we all know, it's because of, for example, the hedging strategies of energy suppliers, or depending very much on when businesses have been contracting. So we still need to see the proper impact of this decrease in prices. Looking a bit further ahead, according to our forecast, to our benchmark power curve for GB, we don't really expect wholesale prices, electricity prices, to come back to pre-pandemic levels anytime soon. So power prices are expected to stay high in the short term, just because of the need to run gas and coal-fired generation. And we all know how the merit order works. So there is a clear connection, causal relationship between gas prices and broader electricity prices, also in the presence of significant renewable generation within the system. Natural gas prices, of course, as I was hinting before, have been reduced. So natural gas prices have been reduced compared to previous spikes and hikes, particularly in August 2022. But they remain elevated, obviously, because of the increasing reliance on liquefied natural gas, LNG, rather than the cheap Russian gas that we have been used to from a continental level in the last decades, really. So we do expect to have a price drop in the mid of this decade, with the retirement of some power plants, and obviously with the new offshore wind capacity coming online. So that will be a big reason why we expect kind of a decline in wholesale electricity prices in the mid of the decade. But we need to be aware that these fall in electricity prices may not last long. And that is just because as we approach the end of the 2020s, we are expected to witness demand growth from the widespread electrification of the economy. And that means electrification of transport, electrification of heat, all of that, production of green hydrogen, of course, through electrolysis. So all of those factors will lead to an increase of demand. And so the effect on prices may mean that prices will still be above pre-pandemic levels for the foreseeable future, despite the significant growth in renewable generation, which is expected. Because for more information, feel free to reach out to us if you want to know more about our benchmark power curve. Anyways, a key trend that is set to continue is that the net zero transition is set to accelerate with more and more capacity coming online. Solar photovoltaics, solar PV, and onshore wind are clearly the cheapest technologies. But as we know, there are still planning issues, permitting issues. So we may not see these technologies reaching their full potential yet. But at the same time, offshore wind capacity is set to grow in the medium to long term. Of course, talking about more the shorter term, there are a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainties around the contracts for difference. So CFDs have been absolutely crucial in ramping up offshore wind capacity, renewable capacity more generally in the UK. They are the roots of the success story. We went from, in terms of prices, of 120 pounds per megawatt hour back in 2015 to just around 37 pounds per megawatt hour in the fourth allocation last year. This is just in 2012 prices. So massive price decrease. But there are questions actually on whether this price decline will continue. Because the macroeconomic transformations I alluded to at the beginning are really impacting renewable development globally, leading to an increase in the cost of capital, for example. So as we are moving away from a macroeconomic environment characterized by low inflation, low interest rates, and moving to the opposite of high inflation, high interest rates, this is adding really uncertainty, which could be impacting AR5, but more generally, the future of contracts for difference. Because capital costs are really kind of the variable to keep an eye on. So we cannot presume or assume that the trend of lowering strike prices and optimum outcomes out of the auctions will continue indefinitely, really. So all of that is something to monitor, really. At the same time, we expect to see a energy bill, the creation of the future system operator, new flexibility services. So there is really a lot of change underway, and I will cover some of those policy changes later on under REMA. Growth in particular deserves a lot of attention. So as the UK, of course, transitions towards net zero, with the increasing share of the energy generation mix is coming from intermittent renewables. So this intermittency of generation and less reliance on kind of traditional baseload generation is bringing its own challenges and its own opportunities. So there is more and more a need for flexible dispatch solutions. The UK is among the world leaders when it comes to the deployment of batteries. We have seen a rapid recent growth in UK battery storage. There's about 2.5 gigawatt currently operational. And it's worth noticing that about 30% of this capacity, so around 766 megawatt, were installed last year. So it's really ramping up, as you can see from those charts. This growth is set to continue. There is a significant pipeline of new energy storage capacity. At the same time, the business model is somehow changing. So there is a shift underway in the revenue stack and also in the average duration of the asset. So frequency response services are becoming increasingly saturated with less revenues attainable. So we're likely to see a shift towards a greater proportion from wholesale arbitrage and the balancing mechanism. At the same time, we may well witness a shift in the average duration of batteries. So with a greater prevalence perhaps of 2 to 4 hours duration compared to the 0.5, 1 hour that dominated present. And we will be publishing soon a report looking exactly at battery storage next month. So this is a key area of growth and of opportunity within the UK market, within the broader trends towards a more flexible system, really. What about hydrogen? We are often, of course, asked about hydrogen. There is a lot of hype, but also a lot of genuine curiosity around hydrogen. There is also a lot of polarization with a lot of people feeling that it's a kind of binary choice between hydrogen and electrification of the system, while it seems very likely that we will see more and more kind of a hybrid systems, or anyways, the two solutions, so the electrification of the system and the hydrogen to be complementary across different use cases. So while hydrogen seems to be particularly suited for the decarbonization of industries like industrial clusters or as a feedstock, of course, we're talking about low carbon hydrogen. There is also the opportunity of some kind of synergies within the transport sector, maybe with the hydrogen becoming, more common across heavy goods vehicles, or further ahead, aviation and shipping, but also like a hybrid system when it comes to heat in particular. Anyways, complementarity of these two solutions really, rather than an either or choice. Moving to the retail market, we've been, of course, in a very peculiar market situation, given all the transformations I briefly alluded to with the retail market, which has been sort of frozen to a certain extent. Of course, now a question is whether and when we are going to see a return of fixed tariffs, but also domestic tariff competition, with switching in particular has been frozen, I should say. So maybe kind of again the degree of competition that we've been witnessing in recent years, and competition maybe also around energy services. I mean, of course, now the key stumbling block is the price, given kind of fuel poverty, affordability, and everything that we know, that kind of the pain for a lot of consumers and businesses, domestic consumers and businesses. But in the futures, we may well see increased competition, optimizing heat pump, solar, storage, and EVs, as we will see in a second. And maybe should switching recover, also more consumer focus on green supply, so kind of a more aware and proactive consumer base taking greenness and renewables into the equation alongside price once the market start recovering. So given the regulation by Ofgem on market entry, market growth, it's unlikely that we will see plenty of new entrants. As you can see in this chart the trends of the retail market in recent years in terms of active energy suppliers. It's more likely that we'll see probably consolidation. So, for example, acquisitions, maybe from larger companies. So that could be one trend, potentially consolidation. Looking in particular at electric vehicles, we see more creative, innovative tariffs being deployed. Time of use tariffs in particular could well become a key feature of the market, not just static time of use tariffs, but also more dynamic time of use tariffs. So it's not just kind of night and day, but it's really about empowered by a smart meter. It's really about tracking what's happening in real time in the market, and suggesting the best tariffs to consumers. So we may well see, as the EV rollout becomes mainstream, further gains traction, we may see smart comparison and switching developing, and maybe in the medium to long term also more holistic propositions where you have tariffs that include heat, so it's really migrating to a sort of full net zero home service, connected homes in a nutshell. Before wrapping up, it's very important to mention that everything that we say about the evolution of the electricity market needs, of course, to take into account with the elephant in the room, which is REMA, the review of electricity market arrangements, something absolutely crucial. You can see in kind of pink the current market arrangements, in dark gray the options that have been considered and then ruled out. But again, there are still a lot of options, still a lot of permutations on the table. And of course, the purpose is to ensure the net zero readiness of the system. But which options will be pursued will be impacting the shape of the future market design quite significantly. So REMA is definitely something to monitor, and we're expecting a further narrowing down of options in the autumn. Because of course, some of the options on the table, like zonal pricing or nodal pricing, are quite different, of course, from what we have now in terms of a national pricing. So they will lead to profound changes as well. My last point is really that everything that we've been discussing so far takes place against an evolving macroeconomic but also geopolitical landscape. It's worth mentioning that the UK will be competing more and more with other jurisdictions to attract investment, supply chains. So the need for long-term policy certainty and stability is more important than ever. So CFDs, offshore wind, a great success story, but we cannot take it for granted because the international landscape is more and more competitive. Think obviously, for example, at the Inflation Reduction Act in the US. And of course, it was very interesting to see recently the Atlantic Declaration and all of these new potential of partnership and cooperation between the US and the UK when it comes to critical minerals, supply chains, and nuclear, potential impacts on batteries, on electric vehicles, when it comes to supply chains. So very interesting to see how all of that will be implemented. And then, of course, there will be a general election probably next year. So definitely a lot of change, definitely a lot of opportunities as well. So we are really curious to see what the future will bring. And yeah, feel free to get in touch with us at Cornwall for anything concerning the energy market. And happy to support you with our capabilities also when it comes to research and thought leadership.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Atzori. I'm going to open up questions. If anyone in the audience wants to ask any questions, then this is your time to answer any questions. We've got Dr. Dan for just 5 more minutes. But I want to first ask you a question regarding your last point, which was the Inflation Reduction Act in the US. It seems like the UK government is intent on not having the same amount of support for the industry in terms of funding in the same way the US is and the same way the EU is building. How could that impact the UK's competitiveness?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are two different approaches. So the US is looking at, of course, mainly tax credits. We're talking about $369 billion. The EU has chosen a different approach, which is more about streamlining policy and regulation. I think there is a clear opportunity for the UK to do something. So of course, it's very difficult to compete in terms of the actual capital deployed. But one of the key strengths of the UK, I believe, is the fact that there is a broader policy consensus around net zero. So of course, there are different solutions, different policy proposed by different parties, but we can be fairly sure that whoever wins, net zero will keep on being a target. So there is something about policy stability that is crucial. Of course, it's not enough. So what could be the answer? I think the answer, kind of to put it short, is to get REMA right. So so to ensure that REMA is really working to provide certainty to investors globally, policy certainty, that the solutions being adopted are easily understood by investors, developers, generators alike, and also crucially that the time frame to make those decisions is reasonable. Because something that needs to be avoided is a long investment hiatus where the process drags on for a number of years, creating uncertainty. So get REMA right and get REMA right in a reasonable time frame.
Following on from that point, it was recently suggested by the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit that energy bills could actually be £1,750 lower had the UK transitioned to renewables faster. Would you agree with that? And what do you think has held back the UK in regards to rolling out renewables? I note that later today we have a panel on the windfall tax, and some believe that that could have an impact. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, I'm not going to comment on the specific numbers, but I think more broadly, definitely, the more renewables you have on the system, the cheaper the bills will be in due time. But there still needs to be an awareness that the way the merit order works at the moment still means that gas prices will have kind of the final word about prices. So the merit order is something to take into consideration. But when you actually have all the offshore wind capacity that is needed, but also the onshore wind and the solar capacity, then you will see an impact on prices, despite the fact that you will have more demand as well. So that may act to counterbalance. So what has been holding up until now? So probably something around permissions and kind of planning for onshore wind and solar needs to be mentioned, because of course offshore wind, again, great success story, but there is also a need to streamline onshore wind and solar, also ensuring that local communities, rural communities see the benefits. There are so many innovative solutions that have been explored, for example, across the continent, like agri-solar or agri-wind, where you actually, the rural communities, that instead of being passive, they actually embrace the net zero revolution. They find an opportunity to keep their kind of agriculture, for example, or cattle, but at the same time they get new revenues, and so it creates opportunities. So I think the key is really streamlining planning permissions and ensuring that the communities are fully on board and see the benefits.
Thanks for that. That's really interesting. I know we're practically out of time, but we did have some questions from the audience that I just want to quickly get through if we can. One from Ambrose McNevin here, which says, energy intensive sectors such as data centers are exploring demand response. Do you see the market structure encouraging investment in on-site generation?
I think, I do agree, like on-site generation and demand side response are absolutely crucial. And also it's a way for businesses to, at the same time, to pursue their net zero journey and to save money on their energy bills. So on-site generation is definitely the way ahead. I think it's definitely that's the future. A lot of businesses are doing it, and so yeah, of course there should be probably more kind of a more conducive framework in that respect. But I think that is happening, and it will keep on happening, because again, it's really an ideal way for businesses to see the benefits from the net zero transition, to save costs at the same time, and to remain competitive. And again, this is happening really at European level. We see a lot of businesses pursuing this path towards decarbonization.
Brian Clavin asks, what do you foresee as the future for small modular reactors here in the UK and worldwide?
That's a good question. I think nuclear has clearly emerged from the British energy security strategy as a key area of focus. We see the government, which is very committed. We see also the opposition that is in favor of nuclear. So I do think that small modular reactors present a lot of opportunities, and also being a to a certain extent, there are a lot of manufacturing and supply chain potentially in Britain. It could be a really good opportunity not only to increase low carbon capacity, but also to ensure more jobs within the manufacturing and supply chain. So of course, we still need to see kind of the commercial feasibility when prices come down. There's still a lot of questions, but I personally see it as a very interesting proposition that definitely needs to be pursued.
And finally, Michael Cunningham says, looking at the government's publications on increasing production with nuclear power through to 2050, but with only limited progress and approval so far, do you think this will happen in reality? What happens, like what is the reality if the proposed nuclear capacity isn't delivered?
Yeah, that of course, a lot of ambitions. I think is the goal is to have one new reactor approved every year, but we know that nuclear is not always, it's not always the most fast moving sector to get through approvals and so on. So we definitely need baseload. Energy storage is as we said, incredibly important, but it's not enough. So we definitely need baseload, and nuclear seems to be the best way to put low carbon generation on the system. And going back to the previous question, perhaps alongside the large reactors, it's probably worth exploring smaller modular reactors that could actually streamline this capacity, allowing it to come online faster. So probably worth having a sort of twin track where you look at both the large reactors because you need that capacity, but also maybe streamlining the small modular reactors and advanced modular reactors.
It's a really interesting question regarding nuclear, and I knew that it would come up because there was also a recent article on Electrical Review about from our columnist who doesn't seem to be the biggest fan of nuclear and its baseload concept, but it's really interesting to see the different sides of the argument there. So I really thank you for joining us, Dr. Dan Atzori. Really insightful session, and I know we've run over, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Jordan and all, for the invite. It has been a pleasure, and I will keep on following the next sessions. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.